Welcome, everybody. This is the CENIC 2019 panel, Digital Inclusion Coalitions. I'm happy to introduce Chris Durr from the Sacramento Public Library, where he's been a librarian there and has worked there since 2010, I think. He's also a Teach for America alumnus, and his interests are technology literacy, information literacy, and emerging technologies and librarianship. Also, Kate Eppler from the San Francisco Public Library, program manager for the Bridge at Maine, I believe. And the Bridge at Maine is a literacy and learning center. She coordinates San Francisco's award-winning Connect with Tech Week, which brings more than 20 community partners together to produce a week of technology education events, and she co-chairs the Access and Learning Work Group of the San Francisco Tech Council. Take it away.
Thank you, Scott. So, as Scott said, my name's Chris Durr, and I'm a librarian with the Sacramento Public Library. I'm going to start by talking about digital inclusion coalitions and issues of digital equity by kind of backing into it from the why perspective. Like, why should we be engaged? Why should we be concerned with issues of digital equity? And I'm going to do that from a little bit of a personal story here. So you can see on the map there, Humboldt County is highlighted. That's where I grew up. And the truth is, I grew up pretty poor. Going through foster care, going through child protective services. I lived on a Native American reservations because folks were kind enough to take me in, not because I have any Native heritage. I'm also a first-generation college student, and a lot of the ways I was able to get into college, a lot of the ways I was able to access the world of higher education is because there was scaffolded programs to get me in there. Programs like Upward Bound, like the TRIO-based system that really expanded my horizons. So growing up, going to high school in the 90s, I was able to have these opportunities to learn about a world outside of my own through these programs that really brought me to a campus and helped me learn what higher education, what academia was all about. So after college, I went on and I did Teach for America, which is, to me, it was a way to confront the issue on the ground of this educational inequality and to tackle it as a larger civil rights question. Because I think that having the zip code that you're born in determine the outcome of the rest of your life is kind of a huge civil rights issue. And this comes back around to digital equity. Because after Teach for America, I went into library land and I began to focus more and more on digital skills. And as connectivity became more and more available, as online learning platforms began to move more and more online, or educational opportunity began to move more and more online, educational opportunity has become flatter for everywhere. So it's easier to access educational opportunity everywhere because these sources are open and they're on the web. But that is only true if those digital resources are inclusive to all populations. So looking back on my experience of being bussed off to the College of the Redwoods every summer so that I could learn what college was really like, and knowing now that college is 40–50% online, and knowing what persons that are in historically disenfranchised communities are experiencing now, they don't necessarily have those opportunities to have a real college experience without a digital connection, without the hardware, without the software, without the broadband speeds in order to make that reality accessible. And digital inclusion coalitions working with issues of digital equity are trying to confront that issue for educational opportunities, but we're going to talk lots and lots about other types of opportunities as well. But this is kind of my experience of backing into this issue from my background growing up. And I think it's important for myself that it's grounded in this history and understanding that it's the same civil rights struggle that programs like Upward Bound, like TRIO programs, are trying to tackle just on another platform here. So Kate here is going to talk about why a coalition for a little bit. And we're going to switch back and forth a lot, so pardon us.
Hi, as Scott said, I'm Kate Eppler. I'm the program manager for the Bridge at Maine, which is the Adult Learning and Literacy Center for San Francisco Public Library. That means print literacy, and that also means digital literacy, which is what brings me here today. There are many three-legged stools in life, you may have noticed, and digital inclusion is one of them. It's said that it's about connection, it's about affordable internet connection, it's about having the device to use, and it's also about skills and training. When we approach this issue, and if we stop short at skills and training, then people aren't connected. So we don't want to take 9 steps out of 10 and then wonder why we haven't made change for people or why we're still having issues sort of fully participating in society. We'll talk a little bit more about this later on, but job applications are almost entirely online. If you try to submit paper to McDonald's, they will tell you to go and fill it out online. The census for 2020 is going to be in large part online. And in San Francisco, where people think that, it's a tech hub, right, this shouldn't be an issue, it still is. We have 100,000 people who don't have internet at home, and another 20,000 are using dial-up. So we want to really be sure to get those 3 prongs. And when we approach this from a coalition perspective, we have a variety of skills, a variety of resources, a variety of perspectives that can come together to solve what is actually kind of a complex problem.
So related to that, this is from a book called The Art of War Visualized. It's by Jessica Hagee. She does a webcomic called Indexed, which is a graph every single morning that you can look at that's kind of fun and analyzes information. So this is taking the idea of the art of war, which is when there is low risk and little reward, you want to stop. When there's no risk and lots of reward, you want to go. And when there's lots of risk and lots of reward, you want to go, but not alone. And I think that part of the reason why we want coalitions to do this work, why it's important to bring in a plurality of partners, is because it is high risk, high reward work. The idea is that advocating for broadband access, going to people and engaging with them about what skills they need for a 21st century economy, working with hardware providers and other agencies that can provide actual physical tools to help people be able to do computing whenever they need to do computing. That's all a lot of risk and a lot of reward. There's lots of money that's being put out there. There's lots of person power that's going into these efforts. And it's better to approach your community with more than just your own efforts sort of pushing your sales there. And I think that that's part of the reason why you want these coalitions, because it has a great potential for reward, but also lots and lots of time needs to be spent and invested in a risk here. And Kate, feel free to talk from the microphone from there while we look at these resources here too. But we're going to talk about a couple of resources that we've done in terms of the research here. There's the National Digital Inclusion Alliance, which will be the first thing that we'll show you. We're going to show you this particularly interactive map called the Purdue Map that's put on by Purdue. I'm going to show you something that Sacramento City College did in the study of ESL and distance learners, and then Closing the Digital Divide study that was put out by the Brookings Institute, I believe. So I only have 3 of them up, so we're going to miss one. The National Digital Inclusion Alliance, could anyone who has heard of this organization raise their hand? All right, so it is a nationwide organization that's really concerned with issues of digital inclusion and digital equity. They have lots and lots of resources on their website. You are not seeing it right now. You are still in a presentation. So let me get out of this real quick. Yeah, it's not coming up for me either. So here we go. The National Digital Inclusion Alliance, a resource that is a nationwide resource. They have lots and lots of information on their website. We encourage you guys to check it out. One of the most helpful things that I found from them is their guidebook, which is really gives you kind of a play-by-play if you're considering starting your organization in your community. Lots of information that's in there. Do you have anything you want to add about their website?
It's great. Check it out. It's full of inspiration and future partners.
Yeah, lots of research you can find there too if there's people you need to make the case to. So here is the Purdue Center for Regional Development here and their Digital Divide Index. This is using 2017 data. We can really zoom down to census tract here. The site here has a lot of data on it, so it just tends to take a little bit to work. That's San Francisco, right? Yeah. My geography is a little fuzzy. So you can see where there are differences in the regions here, San Francisco, and they've got their guide here that tells you exactly what they're considering. They're looking at demographic information, they're looking at broadband connectivity speeds, and then they give them a digital divide score. The lower the better. So we can pick out any region here, any census tract block in San Francisco, and we can see what percent is over 65, how many have high school educations, poverty rate, their average broadband up and down speeds, households without connectivity, and then it gives it a digital divide score here based on a couple of factors.
I am obsessed with this map. It has been incredibly useful. It is printed out and is on my office wall. One of the things you can do is you can overlay it with things like library locations or computer labs or other service providers to really get a sense not just where people aren't connected, but where there are no other options. In San Francisco. Yeah.
Where's the data that drives this resource coming from?
It's a variety of sources, I'm afraid, and I don't have them to mind. The city of San Francisco recently did a sort of comprehensive phone poll, which is now sort of folded into our version of this, finding out like where people are connected, what obstacles they see to use, if they've been scanned in the past, things like that. So it might be worth checking the dates on that and combining with what you have locally.
And another thing to consider with the data, I mean, where it comes from, that's a good question. They are upfront about what it's actually saying. So the fact that you do not have a high school degree, if you're part of that 9% of the population in this tract in San Francisco, does not necessarily mean you're suffering from the consequences of the digital divide, right? That's an approximation of a problem. It's not an accurate portrayal of it in 100% of instances. Similarly with average download and average upload speeds, if you go into some of the rural regions, if someone can pay $1,000 a month for internet access because they want the highest speed and they're doing something really significant with that, then it's going to raise the average upload speed and average download speed for that region in a way that can be problematic for trying to use this as a score to really assess the digital divide. So you got to look at the data and actually think it through. But it's a place to start in kind of a problem that lacks places to start in some ways.
Yeah, for instance, if you really zoom in on San Francisco, you can see that the parks are considered to be very low, like very high digital divide areas because no one lives there.
All right. One more website. So in engaging with partners to create a digital inclusion coalition, one of the partners that we engaged with was Sacramento City College, and they had done a study in 2017 about their students and their distance learners and what sort of issues they suffered from. So they have demographic data on their students here. They have what sort of areas of study they're focused on. They have what percentage they are using the internet via a computer or a work computer or a Sacramento City College computer or the public library, home computer, how often that's happening. And it goes down and it breaks even further information. What can they do to get help? What resources do they know of? Are there people at home they can ask? Are they only accessing the internet via their smartphone? Are they able to use the library databases from Sacramento City College? This is a study that the City College commissioned that gives us really interesting and valuable information for the region of Sacramento. And having access to this is part of why starting a coalition is valuable, because they're sharing with us what they find about their student population. And one of the things that, if you read the study thoroughly here, is that access to devices is not a particular issue for students engaged in community college in our region. Access to help for those devices, ability to use those devices is a particular need. So when we're thinking about efforts that we want to engage in, if we want to increase educational opportunity, providing laptop computers to people isn't necessarily where the most meat is on the bone. Providing help with those laptops and using them effectively is. Okay, so let's get back to the PowerPoint here.
Okay, so coalitions. This is what it has looked like for San Francisco Public Library. We started this in 2016, addressing a couple of things. You know, again, not to like preach to the choir too much, but we can't really, people won't use technology. They won't really be connected unless they have the comfort and the skill and the knowledge about how the technology can change their lives, how they can do things like make a DMV appointment so they don't have to wait all day, how they can better communicate with their doctor and get the service that, you know, the city is increasingly putting online, that healthcare is increasingly putting online. And we know that these problems are stronger in socioeconomically disadvantaged neighborhoods. We know they correspond with older people, limited English proficiency. So we didn't want to ignore this, and the library wanted to address it. In addition, there is help out there. San Francisco is actually fairly rich with resources and classes and computer labs, but getting the word out and really encouraging people to try in an inviting way is difficult. You can't just tweet about it because they're not on Twitter. So, you know, barring like having people to go door to door, we're really trying to think of what we could do to raise awareness and make it an important thing for the whole community. So, and here's where I need to give credit to our digital inclusion fellow, Wen Shi. We had her through the N10 Google Fiber program, and this was her brainchild. And now it is my life from January through May. But she was gonna do a digital inclusion week. And we really did just start out saying, we're gonna do a week, hey, everybody come help us do this thing, essentially like a computer class festival. We left it open, and that it is still open. This thing is built by planning meetings, which start in December or January, depending on how behind I am. And people come, and the first meeting is really, really, really important. It's a brainstorming session where people throw out ideas essentially for a whiteboard, and we start to group them together. It's a very flexible event in that way. And when I say throw out ideas, it's like, here's a problem we want to solve. You know, people don't know how to access their healthcare portals, or here's a problem, ethnic media is going online, and our seniors are being left behind. So those ideas come out, and the week starts to take shape around that. Last year, it was 73 different classes, events, and workshops. And this year it is over 80, which is really exciting. We have good attendance. It's 3,500 for the past 2 years. So there are some big events, and there are plenty of basic computer classes that have 7 people in them. And that's just how basic skills is. You know, that's a really impactful 7-person class. So we have events across the spectrum for that. We're going to talk a little bit more about data and like results and outcomes for this later, but this is what we're measuring right now. We have grouped, last year we grouped the sessions into sort of different focus areas. So it was job search, accessibility, which was a big one for us, classes for people not speaking English, education for parents, security, and of course lifelong learning, because I'm a librarian and we always love the lifelong learning category. So we asked people to rate whether they felt the session had been useful in those areas, and we asked them to say, did they find the session useful? I was pleased with the results on that. Over 90% found it either extremely useful or useful. And then we sent a follow-up to people who had completed the survey to ask them if they were using the skills that they had learned during Connect with Tech Week. I do not want to talk about what the response rate was for that follow-up, but there was a response rate. And 80% said that they were using the skills they'd learned. And we got a variety of really interesting answers there. People also sort of wrote quotes on the evaluations that I made them fill out. And this is one of my favorites. I am retired and lost my computer skills over 12 years ago. So this class sped me up to 2018. And that's from a user who was self-identified as homeless, but attending the online job applications class. And then we do have an event called the Tech Expo, which is what that next quote is referring to. I got to know there are so many things that the city is offering, especially to seniors like me, This is part of the point of the week, actually, is to really get awareness out there about the different services that all these different partners and all these different workshop participants or presenters are offering. We produce like a little program booklet, and people circle things and they walk around with it, and they treat it as an excuse to go to a computer lab that they wouldn't have before, to visit a library or another spot that they wouldn't have before. So I was really pleased with that.
So I came to this idea actually because I became aware of Kate's work via an online conference. And I thought that it had some legs here for the Sacramento region, so I pestered her to get her input and then sold it to the administrators in my library. And Kate and I, our coalitions are in very different stages of formation here. And we have gone about the work in slightly different methods. So she began with a week, and the plan was to engage in skills in this week. We began with the idea of forming a coalition, and the plan being to engage with a bunch of partners to figure out what we can all do together. That is going to turn into a digital inclusion week because there's someone steering the ship on that. Originally, the idea was that we pitched the idea to targeted partners. We convened a group of partners to plan the summit. Then we held the summit to share and to mutually work on a plan. And we're still in the phases of making those working groups have sort of concrete actions. So just in January, we held our summit. We had been working on it for about 3 months. We actually stole, for one day, oh bugger. This gentleman, my mouse isn't going to show up here. This gentleman right here, Alex Bond, he came down to Sacramento to talk to us about what San Francisco has been doing. And we had our summit with about 100 folks there, representing about 30 to 40 organizations, talking about works that they're doing on issues of digital equity and what they want to see for our region. From there, we came up with different working groups. We've got one group that's working on skills acquisition, one group that's working on issues around hardware and broadband, another group that's working on outreach to historically disenfranchised communities, and a third group that is focused, or a fourth group that's focusing on metrics and turning the information we coalesce together into something tangible and usable for stakeholders. So trying to come up with some sort of digital equity playbook for our region. So that if you enter in for help with an EDD office in Sacramento, or if you enter into a public library, or if you enter in through one of the Sacramento City Unified School adult education services, that they've got a similar set of tools, input forms, things like that, that is universal across these different players in the region. So we're still planning and figuring out exactly what all that's going to look like. And part of the reason why we want to talk to you all is because you can see the coalitions that we're working on in sort of different phases of life right now, and having different starting points as well. Because this is work, this is an idea that doesn't have a set in stone starting point, that doesn't have a one-size-fits-all sort of life cycle to it. Partnerships.
So now we're going to talk about what's great about having partners, and then after that we're going to talk about what can be complicated about having partners in a coalition. We have been able to put together some really nice events that brought together people working in the same space that maybe hadn't done work before. I'm going to just share a couple of examples. We'll sort of give you the texture. One of them is called the Tenderloin Tech Fair, and that's the Tenderloin Technology Lab, which is a computer lab run by St. Anthony's. Has an open house during which you can come get your computer repaired by one organization for free. You can come get one-on-one help learning how to design a website by another organization, or you can attend a class about how to use a smartphone or learn some other basic skills. So it's a nice full-day festival. Also new this year, which I'm very excited about, we're going to have one organization giving out 150 refurbished desktop computers, which is pretty sweet, right? I'm like, how are they going to get those all to the library? But they're going to do it. And another organization who is, they're providing sort of tech help. The school district may be tabling there, as well as a local family and a children organization showing their website resources. So kind of like, hey, here's your computer. There's going to be an opportunity to sign up for low-cost internet. So really getting people connected and also sort of empowered to use it all in the same space. So that's something that happens because we can put people together, and they all came together in the planning meetings, and we're like, hey, let's do this. And it was very exciting. Having all those different people involved means just greater awareness. You have more sort of publicity levers to pull. You have more ways to get the word out. You have more places that are going to have your program guide there because they're involved. So that's been, you know, pretty convenient as well. In addition, when I started at SFPL, part of the brief was we need more technology classes, and also please develop stronger relationships with technology companies. So this kind of works for both. Sometimes tech companies, this is their first engagement with the library. This is the first time that they've tried to do a volunteer effort with the library that was really sort of content-based. We have a lot of people who want to come like stuff envelopes, you know, for summer reading, but this is the first time they've really brought what they do to us. So that's an opportunity for future growth and collaboration. In addition, this does pull in some volunteers from the local sort of tech worker community, and sometimes great things flourish from that as well.
And Kate, part of your work is part of the digital inclusion Tech Expo week you do is multilingual, correct?
That's right. This year we have, I think 20% of the classes are in Chinese, Mandarin and Cantonese, Spanish, or Filipino. So we're really pleased with that, always trying to ramp that up more. In addition, there's a big event called the Tech Expo, which we are now having interpreters for, which is great.
Do partners play a role in that? Do they provide the services, the multilingual support?
Yes, they do. Some of them are teaching the classes. On an earlier slide, for instance, there was a partner teaching a digital parenting class in Spanish, so talking about online safety. That also came with childcare provided by another partner, which was great. And the Twitter has a space called the Neighbor Nest that has like a play area next to the lab. So being able to offer that content there was really exciting. And a city partner, Office of Civic Engagement and Immigrant Affairs, is providing the interpretation. Sacramento?
Yeah. So part of the challenge that we faced in Sacramento is that we're big. we're not just big in terms of lots of branches. We're big in terms of the physical footprint that we have, the geography, the amount of space that our county reaches, that our library system covers, is really, really big. So when we were planning with partners, we wanted partners that work in our city and urban environments, but also ones that work out in our rural and county environments. So we engaged with the Mayor's Office of Technology and Innovation, as well as with an economic development council called Valley Vision that doesn't observe county lines, but we still were able to partner with them in order to try and come up with partners to help us plan our summit. And we went with those two in particular because it kind of hits the two easiest targets of urban help and rural concern at the same time. Because what digital equity looks like in one part of Sacramento is vastly different from what digital equity looks like in another part of Sacramento. So in our farmlands, they need better broadband speeds so that they can do smart farming. And they might want instructions on how to automate the drones that they want to fly over their crops. But in another part of Sacramento, you need internet access so that you can fill out job applications and so you can work through government assistance programs too. And you need broadband. Ideally, all skills are all places all the time. But in terms of reaching the lowest hanging fruit, we had to consider that and sort of the diversity of our communities. So that was one of the ways in which we targeted the partners that were helping plan our coalition and plan our summit, because we knew that they already had lots of inroads with these other people that are confronting the digital divide in different areas and in different ways, and could bring them to the summit to all engage in communal conversation about what it looks like to make change in this area. I'll talk about my deltas and then, yeah. So Kate was concerned you guys can't tell that's herding cats. You all can tell that, right? One of the issues we had with some partners was that sometimes we approached them and we got yes to joining the coalition. And I would approach them 6 months before the summit would happen, and then follow up with them 2 months before the summit's supposed to occur, and I hear nothing. So the energy of my initial contact would fizzle because it took so long. But I said we had 40 partners. That's a lot of phone calls to make over a course of time to get people into the building talking around the issue here. So that can be expected, but it's something to be aware of if you're going in planning from the path that we went on, that you can hear the answer that you want to hear and still not have the outcome you want to have happen. So being aware of that and setting your mental expectations there is important. And another one is mission creep. So in talking internally with our own staff members inside of Sacramento Public Library, we begin with issues of digital equity and digital inclusion, and making sure people have access to technology and the availability of the skills to capitalize on those. And it turns into conversations about whether or not staff should have to take out paper jams on printers and whether or not that's union work. So mission creep is something to be aware of and that you want to crouch for, especially when you engage with partners there, and making sure that you stay focused on what the end goal is.
Yes, and some more sort of things to consider. I mentioned 80 programs for Connect with Tech Week, second week in May 5 through 11. That's a lot. It's a very broad, it's a big tent. And I think to some extent that's been a strength because it's allowed us to be very flexible. It's also like, wow, that's a lot going on. I describe it as soup. It's got lots of ingredients in it. Maybe it's tasty, but it's got. So as we grow forward with this, I think we're going to have to sort of look at that. In addition, it's been a little bit of effort, like pitch in, right? Like pitch in, do a class, host something. In one notable case, give us some money. And your logo goes on the thing. We'll do your logo. Well, now I have 37 logos. So we're going to have to figure something out because the graphic designers are really mad at me. So just being totally upfront about this model is really sort of easy to get going, and it's exciting, and it's fun to do, and I recommend it. But pretty soon everybody is excited and interested, and then you have a lot going on. So the balance of promotion and education. What I mean by that is that let's say there's a really prevalent tech product that people should maybe learn how to use, say a ride-sharing app. And let's say the ride-sharing app is willing to come teach a class to your users about how to use it. And from the horse's mouth, this is how you use this app, right? And then let's say the ride-sharing app workers show up with branded t-shirts and bright pink mustaches. And all of a sudden you realize that you're totally promoting a company through the library. I probably shouldn't have told that story. This is being recorded. But it's something that we have to consider with sponsorships. This comes up a lot. The content is is relevant for the effort. Sometimes what the company is doing is relevant for the effort, but we don't sell library audiences, right? So it's something that we have to balance as we go forward, and it's something to keep in mind when you think about these coalitions. And then everybody's job but nobody's work plan. This happens less with Connect with Tech Week because it is such a discrete area of effort. It's a week, right? But I've been involved with other efforts where you get together and you're going to do a thing, and the thing is very exciting, but the thing is sort of over and above what everyone is already doing during the day. And so I think that's something to be mindful of, is like where are people's incentives coming from? How is this actually going to bake into their daily work? What can you accomplish given what else every organization at the table is doing? Because some things make a lot of sense, but you sort of need buy-in from the top, or you need to find a way to sort of dovetail and leverage what people are working on right now. Okay, so if you're interested in forming a digital inclusion coalition, nod at me. Yes, no, okay, well here are some partners that may be present in every community. You might look at city and county government. San Francisco is blessed to have an Office of Digital Equity now, which is great. So that was an obvious partner for us. We've enjoyed support from many different departments. Your EDD probably sees a strong need for this work. Community and senior centers probably see a strong need for this work and would like to be involved. They're also a great source of, people. Community colleges as well. Public libraries, of course. Public housing is a key partner for us. and a place to look. So there's probably a few more you can think of. And then we do have a couple of partners that are sort of unique to our different situations. For San Francisco, the San Francisco Tech Council is a organization of different nonprofits, government arms who are working on connection issues specifically for seniors and people with disabilities. So they've been a wonderful partner for this effort. They brought a lot of expertise around accessible technology. The Office of Digital Equity as well. Really great to have somebody working in this space, like in City Hall, who can help us get this off the ground. And we all have our own tech companies, of course.
Yeah. So there's also a Mayor's Technology Council in Sacramento. One person I want to highlight here is Nikolas Hastings. He's an educator in Sacramento who has founded Square Root Academy. He's really concerned with STEM education. If you can, find yourself a Nikolas Hastings that is really an expert at content delivery, advocacy, and cares a lot about reaching historically disenfranchised communities. Finding those really powerful players and helping to activate them, helping to make sure they have access to the resources and that you're able to provide as a library or coalition is valuable, I think. And then actually she just walked in the room here, Stephanie Tom in the back. I told her I'd mention her. She's with the California Department of Technology. She is interested in what we're doing with issues of digital equity as well. So there are statewide initiatives too, and statewide offices that you can ping for support too. We're still ahead of that work. We aren't there yet, but it is going to work its way into our plans. So boundaries and concerns. Do we want to be a mile wide and an inch deep? Exactly what sort of skills do we want to target? And what are good metrics to use? These are sticky questions. So, you know, there's general computer literacies which are required for entryway. That's a price of admissions ticket to get into the job market. You need to know how to use a keyboard and mouse. You need to know how to interact with a website that has fields. You need to be able to fluently and properly interpret information on a natively digital platform. Those are skills that you kind of have to have in order to engage in a 21st century marketplace. And working with partners, they talk about focusing on advanced manufacturing, for instance, and making sure that we train people up on a particular manufacturing coding language. And that's great. That's more a mile deep and an inch wide, right? And that's a targeted, statistically identified economic need in Sacramento that we want to try and achieve. But we need to be aware too that some of those people that are going to be interested in advanced manufacturing, that are going to take the most economic advantages of that pathway into upper middle class life, they may need to start first with learning the keyboard and mouse. And when we talk with partners and policymakers that are interested in trying to get those deep skills into the hands of people that lead to real lifelong economic change, we need to be sure that we also show that there's this need to get this initial foundation built in some populations that are transitioning in their careers. So that can be a real concern of trying to balance that act between exactly how wide of a net you want to cast and how deep you want to go into the skill building. And then the metrics and good outcomes to track. It's hard. I don't have a good answer for this one. Kate and I were both talking. We survey.
Yeah, you guys saw what I'm doing.
I think we have to push to talk.
Oh. You guys saw what I'm doing. So it's, you know, we're getting good information about how people are feeling about their experience. But it's not exactly scientific.
Yeah, we don't, typically as libraries, we don't test very often to determine if a skill is actually present. We measure someone's confidence in their ability to do something, which is useful in some ways, but utterly useless in others. So yeah, we don't exactly have the right answer to that yet. That's part of the reason why we want to engage with partners, to see if maybe they have the answers. Okay. Questions? I'm going to sit down, James, so
Sure.
we're on an equal field here.
No problem. Thank you so much for your presentation. One of the partners or potential partners that I saw absent from your work, and I don't know California as well as I should. I live on the East Coast and I know the East Coast pretty well. But the role of the State Library of California, and then also some of the projects that we funded at IMLS that I'm most particularly proud of are partnerships between public libraries, academic libraries, and civic institutions. So have you seen any potential partnerships with your state library and higher ed?
Do you mind if I go first here, Kate?
Go for it.
So one of the first things that I did when I started to join or start a coalition of digital inclusion in Sacramento was I joined the National Digital Inclusion Alliance listserv and started to get information from there. And when I first joined the listserv, the first thing I did was I went on the archive of emails on that listserv and searched the word Sacramento to see if anyone else from Sacramento had been emailing this listserv. There were 0 hits. So I emailed the person in charge of the listserv saying, hey, is there anyone in Sacramento that's doing this? And I got a contact at the state library, and I got a contact from the Sacramento Community College. So the Sacramento Community College person emailed me back within 5 minutes, and we were on the phone within 10, and they were a partner within 11. The state library sent my email to about 12 different people, and I had about 5 different phone calls, and I hope they become involved.
Any other questions? I think we're down to about 1 minute left.
What advice do you have for very small libraries that would like to start and have a heart for digital inclusion, but they don't have a lot of resources? What are some like low barrier entries for them to just get started to help?
If you have a library, you already have an amazing resource. You have the space that people are not afraid to come to. You probably have the computers in there. Our model is really cheap. Everybody's providing service for free. It's just 1 week. It's a small enough ask. So really, most of the money we spend is on things that you can live without. Oh wow, I can't believe I said that one too. But you can do this. You can do this. You can do this relatively inexpensively. It's just getting people in the room. I mean, time is probably the most expensive thing that you're going to be working with.
Use other people's efforts. So San Francisco, their Office of Digital Equity, they have a playbook that identifies specific skills of computer literacies. It's all based on public library framework. You can download their playbook on their website. You can get their intake and outtake forms. You can look at what skills they're targeting. And from there, you know, generally pretty universal truths about what types of skills are going to be foundational that you can begin with.
Yeah, I think that's it for the program today. Thank you, Chris and Kate. And they'll be around tonight, I suspect.
Yeah. Oh, contact information right there if you want it. Oh, thank you.